Why do millennials hate their jobs? In a new Gallup poll, they found that millennials are very disengaged and not satisfied at work. And you want to know if you're an employer and you want to understand a little bit about how to relate to your employee servant class of millennials, or maybe you are a servant who has been forced into the system as to be a subject of a bourgeoisie capitalist overlord. Employee is what they call them. Maybe you're that person, or maybe you're the other person. Either way, I'm here to help alleviate and help to understand a little bit of just these general dynamics which we're experiencing in the capitalist system. I am your host, the Working Class Guru. Please subscribe and leave a comment in order to allow for the almighty algorithm, peace be upon it, to decide that this will be a channel of great value to people. Peace be upon capitalism, for it binds us and it protects us from a horrible, horrible poverty, and not being able to have enough wealth, I guess. Even though most of us are struggling to get by, working class people, there is a kernel of goodness in it, because communism is on the rise and socialism is on the rise, and those are bad things. So peace be upon capitalism. I'm not here to bring a new communist revolution. I'm here to bring a sword that will merely divide the moral fiber between what the capitalists decide to be valuable and virtuous, dividing it between what the working class people. The majority of people are working class. So let's dive right in here. Why are people and millennials disengaged and hating their jobs? Why do millennials hate their jobs? Why are they disengaged at work? For one thing, we have to look back at the general historicity of the whole millennial generation. The millennials, for all intents and purposes, were raised during the dot-com bubble, and in this boom of technology was a diversion from normal everyday life, was the movement from the modern natural world to the technocratic, internal, computational legacy of the internet age, which brought people from outside inside, which placed them in a revolutionary new way of accessing information, and at their fingertips, at the mere click of a button, at the mere search, you had a multitude of informations at your disposal. And so what this may have led to was the inability to focus for the millennial class, the millennial generation. We had a uprising of attention deficit. There was two different versions. There was attention deficit disorder and there was attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Attention deficit disorder was whereby a child was unable to sit still for any prolonged period of time in order to focus on what the task was at hand, mainly in the institution of the propaganda indoctrination machine of education, which taught the working class children how to have job skills in order to eventually be subservient serfs to a capitalist overlord. And in this sense, they were perhaps mainly a little bit influenced by their baby boomer parents, who were for the first time ever experiencing this new information age. And with this new information age came also video games, where we had PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, and Sonic the Hedgehog. There was the television had always been the central point of focus of a family, whereby when you look at simple families, like the Amish, the center hub of the family unit was always centered around the stove, the area where digestion would take place. Gestation, gastronomy was the central hub for food and nutrients. And now we saw this orientation of the hub of the house being oriented at the place of the propaganda machine. The machine which endowed people with the mythologies which were embodied by the values and virtues of those who held the reins of those organizations, production companies, Hollywood, multi-million-dollar interests of capitalist bourgeoisie, peace be upon them, and their machines of propaganda. And so you could change the channel at a heartbeat in a very second. We had the remote control, which alleviated the necessity to stand up and change the channel. And at this point, information overload became the norm of the human condition. And growing, the baby boomers who had already experienced adulthood at this point had their brains fully developed, were immune to it, whilst the millennials who had to grow up and have their burgeoning cranial brain capacity meet the brain brow ridges of their brain structure was developing during this time, and it led to an inability to focalize on one task at hand. And this was seen in the school system. It was given Adderall, Ritalin, but that didn't slow it down, and attention deficit slowly developed into adult attention deficit disorder. And I'm not saying that this is a universal claim of all of the peoples, of all of the millennial peoples. What this is centralized in basically perhaps these particular individuals who had experienced it. This may be an explanation of why some of your millennial workforce employees, working class peoples, are not satisfied at their jobs, disengaged, hate their jobs, hate what they do. It may be a facet of the video game system. And in this sense, if you're an employer, I would encourage you to follow my channel link, because there will be plenty of this on creating a class structure that is inherently meritocratic, or at least has the groundwork for a very beneficial meritocratic system, and yet is incredibly difficult to navigate. You may be able to re-engage your millennial attention deficit video game player person either by creating a very structured work environment of goal-oriented meritocracy, where you as a employer are taking on firsthand and actively engaging. Not as an employee. Don't think that you're equal to your employees. Don't think that you're the exact same class as them, because you're not. Okay? Give up this postmodern employer, okay? Just be open and tell them, just make sure that you can delineate that between them, that the class differences between you two are different, and they may appreciate that in a sense, and recognize that. And that will help alleviate some of the dissatisfaction with the class unconsciousness, but at the same time, you may get off with the attention deficit millennial dissatisfied with his job by engaging him in a game. Gamification of your job, the workflow. You can do this by following and subscribing to my channel here, where I'll go into detail about it. Go to theworkingclassguru.com. You can go to some of the other things that I'm going to be delineating here. Just follow me, and I will lead you and teach you how to gamify, create a steep symbolic order by which your employee serfs may follow and become appreciative and engaged. Now, another reason why employee serfs, the millennial class of employees, millennials are generally dissatisfied with their jobs and disengaged. It can also come down to just the structure, having external structuralization of their lives under the capitalist lordship. And because this is essentially a exploitation of their livelihood, of their lives. It's very difficult for some of these millennials who have been given nothing, spoon-fed nothing but the capitalist propaganda and the American propaganda of freedom and justice for all, and at the same time finding themselves kneeling day to day to a corporate hierarchy, a corporate company culture which pushes them under the boot of a lord capitalist CEO and wringing them dry of their creativity and ability to actualize and being so heavily indoctrinated into this world of capitalist imagery of luxury, lifestyles of the rich and famous, the rock star, the people that they idolize, rock stars, movie stars, Instagram models, people who are lifestyle gurus and living the dream. They are having a tough time realizing that the actuality of the class system requires that there be a majority of employee serfs in order to drive down the wages, to increase the profit margin, the upside, and the bottom line is what is focalized, whilst this having been regimented into a moral system which is essentially opposite of what they've been raised to, is disillusioning. One of the ways to alleviate this for the millennial has always been they have tried to adopt socialist and communist perspectives, but a way to alleviate this might be to implement some sort of a given company stock program, ability to let them to have some equity into it. If you don't allow that, then you're basically gonna open yourself up to having a people who are basically working and having almost none of the nothing that they produce. This is essentially what alienation is. This is not owning anything that you spend all of your time and your day producing. A wage is not a equity of the company. A wage is a given set of value predetermined between the dialectic of the employer and the employer, that what the employer is going to pay for the employee. And now listen to this carefully. What the employer intends to pay the employee is never inequality of the value at which the work or the labor of the employee is qualitatively gauged at. That means that, because this is the primary dialectics of the employee-employer, is that what they're worth is not what they're going to be paid. It's a predetermined commodity determined by the whatever the wages are at that time, which is always low. And some of the employees, the millennial employees, are realizing this, and this is leading to this dissatisfaction, this aligning with communist socialists like Bernie Sanders or fascists like Donald Trump, and it's bringing upon this great weight on the middle class, on the working class people. One of the ways that you can do that is also to talk to them about it, tell them how it is, and show them that you understand the class relations and that you become a noble capitalist and keep them in mind as one of the primary assets. This is what I delineate in my system of a noble capitalist, becoming a noble capitalist. Who's the most important in the system? At the top of the list are going to be your consumers. These are the most important people in a company, meeting their needs. Right under that, your employees, then your board of directors, and then you. And this is the perfectionary skill of the perfect noble employer. Bring yourself to their level and try to take only what you need from the profit as need be. Don't exploit so much of your working class serfs to the point where they're kept under the shoe of a basic subsistence wage. Try to offer some of your knowledge. I know I don't like Dave Ramsey, but he is a good person and I believe he's doing good. Personally, I just don't like the guy. But what he's doing is good. He is a noble capitalist trying to help give some of the financial knowledge of the capitalist class to the working class people who are not as, their values are very different in how they spend money. You need to help teach them. You need to have your employees be your students. Think of them as your children. You need to treat them like your children. If we go back to Confucianism, he outlines a system whereby each individual cell is enacting as a whole. enacting the whole. The head of state is as to the commonwealth as the father is to the family. The employer is as to the lord as the serfs are to the peasant. You need to understand this and take responsibility as an employer. If you come upon the employee, if you're an employee who is feeling this, if you're feeling the same way, you're disillusioned by it, you feel exploited, then you need to talk to your fellow employees. Don't talk to your employer, because delusional, not noble employer capitalists prefer to live in their class delusion. They will fire you if you so much as utter any sort of a word towards them, any sort of understanding. A not enlightened employer who doesn't follow the working class guru, who doesn't learn about the class of people who are basically dependent upon him or her, choose rather to dilute themselves in class unconsciousness rather than to face the music, and they will fire you. But if you could talk to your working class fellow serfs, get them on board, get them to understand too, show them my channel, share this with them. Maybe perhaps you can, if you're feeling disengaged, just understand that leaving your job is not going to help you. You cannot as a working class person, you are unable to leave the position of an employee altogether. Unless you choose so to become a bourgeoisie capitalist, you are essentially, you belong, as a working class person, you belong to not just one capitalist per se, but the whole of the capitalist class as they are. You don't belong to just one person. You can't just belong to one job. If you leave a job, what are your other options? You have to find another job. There's no way to leave this. You have to try to change yourself, change your surroundings, talk to your fellow working class people, your fellow employees, get them to understand these class conditions, and have your employer watch the working class guru in order to further develop. What kind of a farmer doesn't learn about his cattle? What kind of a sheep herder doesn't take care of understanding the needs of his flock? This is the same thing about some of these delusional capitalists who don't have any sort of a inkling as to the needs and basic struggle of their employee serfs. So I want to just continue. If you're the former millennial who finds himself dissatisfied at work, then work differently. Find a way to gamify and structure your work with very serious goals for yourself. If you are the kind of person who gets disengaged at work, then you have to gamify it for yourself and keep asking for raises. Ask for a raise. Ask for a bonus. Tell your employer about what you're doing, what your plans are. Don't do it from a place of trying to impress them. Do it instead from a place of self-betterment. If you're disengaged at work as an employee, I encourage you to read a little bit more of up on your business. Try to get motivated on whatever it is you do. Find ways to engage with your other working class peoples. This is a common problem. I am the working class guru, here to help the working class people actualize in a system that exploits and alienates them. I'm here to teach capitalists how to get along with their employee serfs, and how to be noble as the noblemen that they are in the hierarchical corporate class system of capitalism. And I'm here to stifle communism and radical fascism in order to reform capitalism in a way whereby the working class people and the capitalist people recognize their interdependence on each other. All hail the machine!